another big complaint, and we're seeing this a lot currently, with tests going optional, standardized tests having lots of issues, that traits don't matter until and unless they're tested. Unless they're like social constructs, there's a lot of criticism here in intelligence in standardized testing. They can be used as a means of discrimination, like there's the debate about standardized tests. While standardized tests are great, and I know that Wake is a test optional school, so that they do have some economic discrimination. People in higher SES tend to perform better, and that's for a lot of reasons, including just access to more resources. Like, I had the luxury of taking the test again, and my score shot up, I don't know, like 100 points or something, back when there were 2 sections. No, I've taken it both, like 2 and 3 section versions of the SAT. And I had that economic privilege. It was very helpful. But it also, that economic privilege helped kind of deal with my own kind of disability stuff that I irrationally refused to get my legally enforced, well, like ADA is a lovely thing, to get my extended time that I really should have used but didn't. So for me, it kind of canceled out, which was okay. I mean, I got here, so I'm doing okay. But standardized tests definitely don't help everyone the same way. They are, on average, they're great. People who score higher tend to be smarter, tend to be more successful. But the argument is that they're more successful because that's what they were selected on. So like getting into Harvard requires that you have a good standardized test. But the fact that you did well on the test doesn't mean anything. It's only because Harvard used it to admit people that it became a useful thing. Like, it is used to predict outcomes that are, like, so if you're admitted based on a score, that score then becomes predictive of your likelihood of getting admitted. So there becomes a positive association, even if there is no true effect. So, there are other kinds of screening tests that, especially with personality, and there's some interesting court cases going through now. The Harvard one, or was it Yale? That, like, underrated Asian Americans on, like, personality aspects to assess personality and character, were essentially an informal method of racial quotas. Historically, it was to, quote, I won't quote because I realize this is a video, to keep those from socially undesirable groups out of the system. And what was deemed socially undesirable at the time, so you have, Jews were considered historically undesirable, and that's one reason why, alumni preference was given. Also a reason why they did interviews to get face-to-face. Asian Americans have to get higher scores on tests in order to have the equal likelihood of getting admitted. You can see this in MCAT scores. There are good and bad reasons why this is done. It is really unfortunate. Like, so, personality has been used as a means of discrimination. There are also weird, really awful, problematic test questions that illustrate cultural bias. This one. So this is I have not found the original source of this question. What I do know is that the earliest reference I can find is from 1987. So that means this test question, if it existed, it's still a really good illustration regardless of its provenance. If this test existed, it existed prior to 1987. The Education Testing Services has come a very long way. And actually, I have and College Board and all of those. And I actually have I have a colleague at one of them, one of the big testing companies, and he or she does really good work trying to incorporate personality into standardized tests. And it's hard because of all those, like, a lot of challenges. And they're also really badass statisticians trying to find ways to statistically detect, because not every question is as blatantly obvious. This question here is an analogy question. So you have to kind of match runner is to marathon as which of these, like, multiple choice. Envoy is to embassy. Martyr is to massacre. Oarsman is to regatta. Referee is to tournament. Horse is to stable. Now, this question, according to these same sources, I really want to, like, go over to ETS and be like, hey, can I see this question, please? Because I need to know where it's from. There were huge racial differences in how whether people correctly got this answer right. According to a couple of sources that seem to at least be consistent. 53% of white respondents to this question got it correct, which is way higher than chance alone. That would be, you get it down to 2 questions, like you can eliminate all but 2. That's about the amount. Now, only 22% of Black respondents, I quote, that's how they described it, got this correct. That is slightly above chance. If someone were to randomly guess, they have a 1 in 5 chance of getting this question correct. Now I'm going to tell you what the answer is in my nice little illustration. This is a really famous question called the regatta question. And the fact that there's a huge racial difference likely stems from the fact that, well, regatta is a really specialized term. Pretty much, you need, like, and in the 80s, it's a really specialized thing that a lot of white country club members would be aware of what a regatta is. Most of the Ivy League have rowing teams, and so knowing what a regatta is a really culturally specific term. Like, yeah. And a lot of these other ones either have, like, a religious connotation, like, so martyr to massacre, like, that's going to favor people with religious exposure over those that don't. And so this has a lot of cultural aspect to it that you need to know. Like, and you see this in lots of types of classes. Even ones you don't even think about, like probability classes, where it's all about, like, decks of cards and dice rolls. What if you've never seen a deck of cards? It's possible. Like, why would you know that there are 52 cards in a deck? That there are 4 suites? 2 are red, 2 are black. And, like, it goes from, like, in the number. Like, that is cultural knowledge in a math class. And so those can be problematic. And most examples aren't this glaring, but it happens. So, is this testing based on, like, what is this question getting at? Is it measuring verbal reasoning? Is it measuring whiteness? Is it measuring exposure to country clubs? Now, being white and being exposed to a country club have a really strong overlap, especially historically. So, and SES, there's so many different ways that this question has some problems. But most questions, like the SAT, is really, really trying hard here. They mean well, they're really trying. Now, this one's unintended. Harvard, holistic admissions criteria, there is argument that the shift from a raw, this happened in the like 1915 or so, Might even be 1914. I can't remember how much of it, if I hit the nail on the head really subtly with this backdrop. It's a graduating class of Harvard. So Harvard College shifted from a raw top X% rule, I think it was top 7th% of like who they would admit, and they created these 5 pillars. Including academic promise, personal quality, so this is supposed to be like the personality one. This is where there's like the, oh, well, they have terrible personal qualities, and I saw this in an interview because they don't have the same color skin as me. Or like, again, please don't like over-interpret, like I'm trying to give you the narrative of why someone would implicitly downrate. Now it's implicit, it used to be explicit. So personal qualities, health and athleticism, which is an ableist thing, geographic distribution, certain areas of the country are more demographically diverse than others, and Harvard parentage. And so this harkens back, so if your parents went to Harvard before the infestation, again, that clearly over sarcasm, that Harvard started accidentally admitting people they didn't think fit the Harvard image. Like, well, they didn't accidentally admit women. My aunt was one of the first students admitted, first women admitted to Princeton. I don't have a t-shirt for them. I should. And she ended up she did her master's in she did helicopter stuff. It's really cool and badass. At MIT, she's really cool, and then she shifted back to Princeton because of like her then fiance, distant stuff. I respect her choices. Like, she's made some lovely, my cousins are lovely. All girls too, because why not? My aunt's like 5. Yeah, 5 daughters. There's a lot of girls in my family. It's weird. So, but the Harvard parentage is another means of discrimination because it goes back to, so your parents are, at least 15, hopefully at least 25 years older than you, going back to a different generation of people of Harvard. So, like, before, the people that Harvard deemed undesirable came. And as a way to have more control over what their admitted class looked like. Now, the one other big chief concern is, like, in terms of potential problems, and the College Board is really trying here. They mean well, because there's a lot of aspects about, like, being described as by a set of scores is undignified and degrading. So there's lots of complaint, rightfully so, that standardized tests are strongly linked with socioeconomic status. I'm not going to get into the aspects here because it's more complicated than, like, just SES. Like, it's more complicated. There's, like, lots of weird stuff. I'm happy to, like, talk to you guys about it in an office hour or one-on-one or whatever. But, so the SAT has been criticized that it favors wealthy students. So what the SAT tried to do is give context to the score by making an adversity index. The goal was to address the criticism of the SAT. It was, quote, designed to place students' SAT scores in the context of their socioeconomic advantage or disadvantage. And so they started to publicize this initiative in May of 2019, and by the end of summer, they had abandoned it, even though it was well-meaning, about this adversity score. And part of it is it's a data quality problem. Like, they were using census tract and school economic funding and stuff like that. They're trying, but it wasn't perfect. It would have, it was broad. It's an SES score. It's not a broad adversity score. Like me, I would have fallen through this and been listed as the most advantaged, while in fact I had enough setbacks and disability stuff that I'm grateful the advantage was there, because it allowed me to get where I am, and I'm very aware of that privilege, because had I not had that economic advantage, I would not have made it. I would not be a professor today, because it helped balance out, and also my stupid stubbornness about using accommodations. I'm better at that now, but they tried, but it was this weird number that is pretty undignified and degrading. And also because of how it was measured, it would almost incentivize parents to change the location of their second home to it could create gentrification immediately. Because people would do this. They would rent, people will rent apartments in better school districts or wider school districts, so they can live where the nice big neighborhoods are with the cheap properties, and then cheap property taxes, and then have the tiny little things so they can take advantage of the better school system. Or in this case, they would have shifted to change their location to a worse school system. So yeah, there's lots of responses to this potential criticism. I believe that the criticism is often overstated, not to the extent that the book paints it as it's totally understated, there are no problems, people just be hating on the tests because they haters. Traits aren't invented or constructed, they're discovered and measured. That one I think is pretty straightforward. That one I totally solidly agree with Thunder. They can be a good way to assess people. Decent, they're at least less explicitly biased in interviews. But they're not great. There are problems, the usefulness of a test is based on what you the quality of and the money you put into it. So here's what Funder says. It's naive to view personality testing for hiring processes as undignified or unethical. I have included here a comic from back when phrenology was popular. This is the employment office, and it says servants wanted. And they are measuring the lumps on people's heads to decide whether they are worthy of being a servant in the big house. So if your test is valid and reliable, then it is a good way to assess people. If your test is invalid or really unreliable, like phrenology with the head lumps, not a good use of testing. So essentially, if it's not misused, you'll be fine. Just be mindful and think about the implications of what your test is. This is why I have this whole spiel. Don't just naively accept the test. Think about it. Think about the questions. How could they be interpreted by different people? Okay, so this last one. So I'm going to leave you with these final thoughts, and this is the last slide for our assessment unit 3. Think about it. Would you prefer a decision about whether you should be hired for a job based, and so this is a kind of a rhetorical pro-testing argument, based on a personality test score or an employer's subjective judgment? Why? Why not? Or which would you prefer and why? And can you envision when your preferences would change? What are some unethical uses of personality testing? There are lots. I've hinted at some, but there are tons more. But so you'll have to visit me or schedule an appointment for office hour typey things. If you want to talk more about this, I know there's a lot, I talk a lot. I have lots of thoughts and opinions and feelings and all that personality stuff. But I'm going to leave you here, or you're going to leave me, I guess. You're going to go to the next video or like go home and have a life. So goodbye. I will see you, or you'll see me soon in the next video where we start our next topic. Cool. Bye-bye.